Imagine walking into a church service and seeing hundreds of people frozen like statues, standing motionless for hours. Some collapsed to the ground, others had visions of heaven and hell. Doctors were called in, newspapers went crazy, and entire cities were divided. This wasn't fiction, this was real, and it all happened because of one woman who dared to pray. Her name was Maria Woodworth. And what happened in her meetings didn't just shock America, it changed the course of Christian history forever. But here's what they don't tell you. Before any of that happened, she was just a broken farm girl who almost gave up on God entirely. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will challenge everything you think you know about faith, miracles, and the power of one surrendered life. The year was 1885. Maria Beulah Woodworth stood in front of a small country church in Ohio, trembling. She was 35 years old, a widow who had buried 5 of her 6 children. She had no theological training, no credentials, no permission from any denomination, but she had a calling. And that day, when she opened her mouth to preach, something happened that nobody expected. A farmer in the back row suddenly fell to his knees, weeping uncontrollably. Then another, then another. Within minutes, the entire congregation was on the floor, some laughing, some crying, some lying completely still as if unconscious. The local pastor panicked. He tried to stop the service. He called for doctors, but Maria didn't stop. She kept preaching because she knew something the skeptics didn't. This was just the beginning. Word spread like wildfire. Within weeks, thousands were traveling from neighboring states to see the trance evangelist. They set up massive tents that held up to 8,000 people, and every single night the same thing happened. People would fall into what witnesses described as trances. They would stand perfectly still, eyes open but completely unresponsive for 3, 6, sometimes 12 hours straight. Doctors examined them, they pinched them, stuck them with pins, shined lights in their eyes. Nothing. It was as if they had left their bodies entirely. But here's where it gets really shocking. When they finally came out of these trances, they all reported the same thing: visions, vivid, detailed visions of heaven and hell. Some described seeing Jesus with such clarity that they wept for days afterward. Others described hell so terrifying that hardened criminals fell to their knees and surrendered their lives on the spot. One newspaper in St. Louis wrote, "Skeptics came to mock and left in tears. Scientists came to debunk and left in silence." But not everyone was convinced. The religious establishment was furious. How dare a woman with no formal training, create such chaos? They called her a hypnotist, a fraud, a witch. Some pastors preached entire sermons against her, warning their congregations to stay away. The medical community wasn't much kinder. They tried to explain the trances as mass hysteria, epilepsy, or psychological manipulation. One prominent doctor in Oakland spent an entire week attending her meetings, determined to expose her as a charlatan. But then something happened that he couldn't explain. A young girl, completely deaf since birth, was brought to the platform. Maria prayed a simple prayer, no theatrics, no shouting, just a quiet, desperate plea to God. And instantly, witnessed by hundreds, including this doctor, the girl began to hear. The doctor stood up in front of everyone and said, "I came here to debunk this woman. I cannot. I have no medical explanation for what I just witnessed." That moment was reported in over 40 newspapers across the country. But the backlash only intensified. Maria was arrested multiple times, accused of practicing medicine without a license, dragged to court, mocked in editorial cartoons. Her own daughter begged her to stop, fearing for her safety. And yet, Maria refused to quit. Why? Because she had seen something the critics hadn't. She had witnessed the power of God transform lives in ways that no human explanation could account for. She had seen the paralyzed walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. But more than that, she had seen the hardest hearts break and surrender to Jesus. And for her, that was worth any price. In 1890, Maria held what would become her most controversial meeting in St. Louis, Missouri. Over 25,000 people showed up. The city had never seen anything like it. Police were called in to control the crowds, streetcars were rerouted, businesses closed early. And on the third night, something happened that even Maria didn't expect. As she prayed for the sick, A wave of God's presence swept through that massive tent like a physical force. Hundreds fell simultaneously, not gradually, but all at once, like dominoes. But this time was different. People began seeing the same vision at the same time. Dozens of them, complete strangers, described identical scenes: angels surrounding the tent, a bright light descending from heaven, and Jesus walking through the crowd. One skeptical journalist who had come to write an exposé later wrote, "I saw nothing with my physical eyes, but I felt something I cannot deny and will not forget. Whatever happened in that tent was beyond human orchestration." The meeting lasted until 4 a.m. When people finally dispersed, 1,247 people had given their lives to Christ. 89 reported physical healings that were later medically verified, and the entire city was talking about one question: was this really God, or was this mass delusion? Here's what happened next that answers that question. In the months and years that followed Maria's meetings, something undeniable happened: changed lives. Not just emotional experiences, but radical, documented transformations. Alcoholics who had been enslaved to drink for decades walked away sober and never returned to it again. Criminals turned themselves into the authorities. Broken marriages were restored. The sick were healed, and many of those healings were verified by doctors who had been skeptics. One of the most powerful testimonies came from a man named Charles Parham. He attended Maria's meetings as a young ministerial student in 1908. He was so impacted by what he witnessed that he went on to found a Bible school in Topeka, Kansas. And it was in that Bible school in 1901 that the modern Pentecostal movement was born. Today, over 600 million Pentecostal and charismatic Christians worldwide trace their spiritual lineage back to movements that Maria Woodworth pioneered. The woman they called crazy, the woman they arrested, the woman they tried to silence. She didn't just change lives, she changed history. So here's my question for you. What would happen if we had that same kind of desperation for God today? What would happen if we stopped caring what people thought and started caring what God wanted? Maria Woodworth faced mockery, persecution, and opposition from every side, but she pressed forward because she believed God was bigger than human opinion, and the results spoke for themselves. If this story impacted you, I want to hear about it in the comments. Have you ever experienced something in your faith that others couldn't explain? Have you ever felt called to something that seemed impossible? Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe because I'm bringing you more untold stories of faith that will challenge and inspire you. Remember, the same God who moved through Maria Woodworth is the same God who's available to you today. The question is, are you willing to believe?